The internet is aflame right now in debate discourse after RFK Jr.'s recent appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast. Not from the podcast itself, but from the fallout of a previous JRE guest, their criticism of the RFK interview. The previous guest, as you've probably heard by now, Dr. Peter Hotez, at one point appeared on the JRE to publicize his book, refuting claims that vaccines cause autism. Since, though, it has morphed into a full-fledged warrior for the establishment view on COVID. Now, Hotez, despite his previous appearance on the JRE, has criticized Rogan vociferously for airing a different view on COVID and now for platforming RFK Jr. himself. Hotez reacted to the interview by advocating for censorship by quoting a Vice article saying, quote, Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation, to which Rogan lit the flame with the response I've rarely seen him engage with someone else on Twitter. He responded, quote, Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I'm offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. The offer was then increased by subsequent offers from billionaire hedge funder Bill Ackman, venture capitalists, and others, nearing some $600,000 to charity. So the question is, will Hotez do it? Should he do it? Two questions. Those are what everyone's talking about right now. And it raises a lot of interesting questions. First and foremost, will he do it? The answer appears to be no. Hotez has offered himself up on Rogan's show, but it only seems as a singular guest. He doesn't want to do a debate. He explained himself on MSNBC to Mehdi Hasan on Sunday night. Let's take a listen to what he said.
That's why we have to have that discussion. And I offered to come and go on Joe Rogan again. I've been on a couple of times and have that discussion with him, but not to turn it into the Jerry Springer show with having RFK Jr. on.
So Hotez says going on with Rogan's podcast with RFK Jr. would be like Jerry Springer. I'm assuming because he thinks that the format wouldn't be right. Now, as a debate, the issues are a few. Number one, Rogan has already hosted multiple debates that were fair. They have borne fruit and actually show him offering grace to those that he disagrees with. The one that really comes to mind is the 2019 debate on marijuana and whether it is dangerous or not. That included Alex Berenson and a doctor who advocates for cannabis use. Joe, obviously an avid cannabis user, but he gave Berenson the time to talk, to air his views. In some cases, he even agreed with him. Not that narrative that most people would think going into that. Now, Joe has already offered to go as long as he needs for the debate, so there's no problem in terms of timing, as when RFK appeared on our show, for example. He had a set time that he had to go. That's the mechanical objection. But now what about the moral one? This is where things get interesting and actually very, very revealing. The elites who back Hotez are united in their view that he should not deign to debate RFK Jr. The so-called experts should not do so. This view was now best shown by Tom Nichols of Resistance fame. He says, quote, no medical professional should ever agree to do this. Never. It elevates the conspiracy guy. It demeans the medical professional. Will only convince the kooks out there RFK Jr. is right, because a real doctor took the time to debate him. Interesting. No medical professional should ever agree to do this because it elevates RFK Jr.? First of all, RFK is polling at some 20% in the Democratic primary. He's got one of the most famous last names in American history. He is a bona fide political candidate no matter what they do. He doesn't need Hotez to elevate him or anyone else. But more so, it gets to the fundamental hypocrisy of Hotez and the other vaccine scientists who are refusing to debate RFK Jr. In one breath, they say that the science does not happen by debates. It happens by peer review and by journals. And thus debating that person would be inappropriate. It's not the way that science is done. But then in the same breath, these people are appearing on public shows like Mehdi Hasan on MSNBC or Hotez in the past on Rogan to push a specific line of argumentation and talk to the public in public policy debate. Hotez not only has been a vocal opponent of claims that vaccines cause autism, but he has literally been going on TV now for 3 years, constantly advocating for the establishment view of COVID. He defended lockdowns. He defended masks for children. He pushed booster shots on kids and COVID vaccines with underlying claims that have turned out to be flat out false whenever it comes to efficacy. He cannot use his so-called secret knowledge of science to advocate for public policy and effectively enter the public square, then take his toys and go home when he's challenged by someone else who wants to talk in that square. It is that view of the scientific establishment right now, that when it's time to debate, then they're scientists. But when they're just scientists, they're doing review. But when it comes to advocacy for something that they agree with, oh, forget the scientific method. I'll end with this. Vinay Prasad observed this nearly 2 years ago. The scientific establishment has nobody but themselves to blame for vaccine skepticism today. People like Hotez use their credentials to push childhood masking and lied about efficacy, and they justify their lockdowns, all of which were anti-science policies. Though don't be surprised, a few years later, there's a huge proliferation of questions around vaccines and about the approval process for drugs generally. If someone has told you a lie once, the odds are they've probably lied to you before. That's a natural human judgment. And if they want to see their trust restored in their authority, they owe it to the public. Make their case with one of their opponents. If you can't, well, it tells us a hell of a lot about them.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.